Yeah, it's us. Okay, and we have stuff going. We have stuff going on. Okay, because this is related to. I thought we could talk about the whole concept of the International Criminal Court. And because there's also a lot of there's just discussions about that. It's with migrants and refugees with international standards, and it's the thing. It's like countries are sort of throwing those accusations at each other. So, just related to the International Criminal Court is the okay, so there's the United Nations, and so the U.S. representative just quit the UN Human Rights Council. So,
wow.
Yeah. So Nikki Haley, and okay, so I don't know if anybody. Okay, the U.S. and the United Nations don't have the greatest relationship, and never really have. And we've talked about the United Nations here because of Dag Hammarskjöld and Ralph Bunche, some of the people that I'm really interested in that worked with the United Nations. And I just really like the idea of the United Nations, of the International Criminal Court, just the idea that there could be some sort of world governing body that, as different as we all are, as countries are, and what issues we have, there could be some agreement about behavior, some standards. They tried to do that after World War I with the League of Nations, and that didn't really turn out. Partially, well, that was a big deal to do with the U.S. The U.S. Didn't join the United Nations, didn't join the League of Nations because Woodrow Wilson wouldn't take the case to Congress. He just went all around the country talking to people about joining the League of Nations, which is good, but you have to talk to your fellow lawmakers. So yeah, Wilson had some real interesting similarities to some current politicians. Like, you need to deal with Congress, dude. You can't do it all yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, the U.S. missed out on the League of Nations. And then, so they tried again with the United Nations in 1948 after World War II. And at that era, that time, there were a lot of people that had lived through World War II and World War I. And they were practically looking at, there were long-serving, like, career military people had served in both wars. So that's just really hard to imagine, but people really wanted to try and set standards, and people really believed. And that is one of the things that interested me so much about some of the UN people that were just so dedicated in the 1950s because of what they've seen. So today, a lot of people don't have much good to say about the United Nations. And
Of course.
Yes.
Nobody really seems like they like the UN nowadays.
Yeah. Well, a big issue with the United Nations is the state of Israel and the Middle East, because the U.S. defends the state of Israel, and so it's. I think the UN does target. The UN criticizes Israel more than it does other countries that are perpetuating human rights abuses. That is true, okay? And it's true that the state of Israel is perpetuating human rights abuses and should be called on them. But it's true that the United Nations is targeting Israel by bringing up those issues and not bringing up other countries' human rights violations.
Right.
So, Anyway, Nikki Haley, the U.S. continues to stick up for Israel, for the state of Israel, and so Nikki Haley left the UN Security Council, and there's 47 seats on the UN Security Council, and a lot of those countries. The problem is that a lot of those countries have really bad human rights abuses and problems on their own. Venezuela does. Venezuela does. I think Saudi Arabia is on that council. The Democratic Republic of Congo and Russia. Well, Russia is on the Security Council. Is on the Human Rights Council. So is on the Security Council. So maybe both. I'm sorry. So that's why. Russia was able to take over Crimea, and Russia hasn't been held accountable because they have a seat on the Human Rights Council.
Right.
So that it's kind of self-policing, which doesn't make much sense, and so it's the sort of thing where I agree with some of what she says. I don't agree with how she's dealing with it. I mean, she's pointing out about the countries with human rights abuses that are on the Human Rights Council and the way you should stick in there and deal with them and try and fix the situation. But it has to do with the United Nations and Israel and Palestine and the U.S. and Israel, which is just, they just had a big vote about it. And what's weird is that a whole lot of countries just abstain. They just don't want to get into it because they'd be messing with the U.S. and they don't want to do that. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Okay, so, but anyway, the United Nations is an attempt to try and appeal to the world's better side, and they have peacekeepers, and that concept was developed by Ralph Bunche, my man Ralph Bunche, and Doug Hammarskjöld. So they're an army, but they don't go to war. They have the blue helmet guys who go and try and maintain peace, and so that turns into a problem. With sometimes they have a hard time even defending themselves, but. I mean, that's the idea, to try and take an active role in the world, to try and prevent war, and to try, I mean, the UN tries to be the world's conscience. And some people listen to their conscience and some don't. So that's one way to put it, because I mean, it's easy to, the U.S. doesn't have respect for the rest of the world anyway, and that's the whole reasoning behind it. But she's certainly within her rights to criticize the UN Human Rights Council and Security Council. There's a lot to criticize.
That depends on which conscience, the bad side or the good side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Depending on which one it is at the time.
Yeah. Things are not looking that great over there.
I haven't really heard too much though on Israel and Palestine lately. It's been quiet on the news. It has.
Yeah. Well, they were doing a whole lot because it was the holiday. It was Eid.
Oh.
It was their holy
So
holy month. So they were
Gotcha.
doing a whole lot of demonstrations during the holy month.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still it was the anniversary of the founding of the state of Israel, which is a holiday in Israel and is marked as a day of mourning by the Palestinians. It's called the Nakab, and that means it's when they feel that they were exiled. So, yeah. So that's a trip. People not being held accountable, but I don't know. I mean, the U.S. has their own reasons, Oh yeah. So what do you think of our new buddies, North Korea?
I'm not getting that whole
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, from what I'm hearing from and I'm gathering, he still hasn't done nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
he hasn't done anything that any other president has done. They all seem to meet with him.
Well, no, he's the first president to meet with a leader of North Korea.
Okay, I thought some other presidents have,
No.
or I thought they said some other president have. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody's
I thought they
met.
said-
Nobody's met with him or his dad or his dad or his grandpa.
Okay.
So so already the U.S. didn't get much out of it, but Kim Jong-un, whatever. I'm sorry, I shouldn't sound this. Now I'm like sensitive about sounding like I'm blowing off pronunciation. I'm really careful about pronunciation. But anyway, neither his father, he's looking good in his country because he got a meeting that his daddy or his granddaddy didn't.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. There's been U.S. officials meeting with North Korea, but not presidents.
Okay, because they're trying to say that it's really not. I guess it's, he met with them, but
Yeah.
I mean they're saying it's not really leading to anything. Nobody. What has it led to by him meeting him? I mean, what
Well, yeah.
what have we gained, and what has anybody gotten out of this?
Well, yeah, because Trump's team is inept and something. I mean, I think this is the sort of thing that should have been planned over months with. Basically, I mean, when Trump took office, a lot of people quit the Foreign Service. And so they don't have very qualified people working there, people that speak the language and understand the culture and could have prepared agreements.
Right. So it's like, does he still have nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
He's still doing everything he was. I mean, I don't understand what the point of was meeting with him if nothing happened.
Yeah, and Trump didn't. Of course, Trump isn't going to do it. It didn't pressure him on didn't say anything to him about human rights. North Korea has a terrible human rights record.
That's what I don't know. That's what I don't understand. Do you think kind of Trump tried to do this for show?
Mm-hmm. Well, he was talking about how much he liked the guy. This was so fucked up. He was talking about how, yeah, it was bad, because when he was asked about the human rights abuses, he said, look, this is a guy that took over at age 27. It was really hard for him. It's like, well, that was weird because it was like he was talking about himself.
Right.
It's like no,
No,
it's not hard.
This was true. I saw something about Trump saying that he wished that the U.S. people would treat him like.
Oh,
he
it's
really
true.
said that. That was true.
It's true. Come on, is it? Since when have we thought he really said that and had it not be true?
Well, the reason why I'm saying is when I saw it, it was on Facebook, and I kind of, people
good.
make kind of stuff
Weird.
So if I don't kind of see it,
Yeah.
I kind of think, well, anybody could have just said this. But since I know Anna Bergman heard it,
Yeah, you just
it
asked
has
me.
to be true.
Yeah.
So I'm like tripping off of that. I'm like, really, dude? I hope he didn't really do that and say that. I hope the Americans.
He did. He said something like Kim's people jump when he
Of course,
says
because they don't
something.
get their heads cut off. They won't-
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his. I don't know, man. I just really think. I think to him, the presidency is a big show, like his show, but just on a real level to him. That's what I think he thinks it is. I mean, I'm really gonna be shocked if he gets hired, gets on for another term as a president. I will be shocked. I personally will be shocked.
I mean, his supporter. He has the highest rating of Republican presidents at this stage of their administration.
That's sad.
His
That's sad.
Well, the big hope is it what's it gonna take for people to have some decency? Jeff Sessions' church, 600 members of the United Methodists, just sent him I don't know what they call it. Basically, sent him a warning or an expression or a citation or something for. Here's Mr. super pious, and his own church is remonstrating with them.
Wow. That's just crazy, man.
Yeah, we just think like, okay, what's going to break it? Can people come together about this sort of craziness, this policy?
I just don't understand it. I mean, there's other Republicans. Why this dude? You know what I'm saying? I could even understand if you chose another Republican, but this guy?
Because they picked each other off because there were 16 of them. They're fucking stupid. Because
Wow.
because they're, because people, like, couldn't negotiate or come to agreements. People are just out for themselves and their own egos. I mean, that's one of the risks we take with having so many people in primaries here with the California.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't seemed to create too many problems yet, but.
What is your thoughts on the mayor of San Francisco?
Oh, I'm delighted. I worked with kids. I worked with teenagers in the Western Addition. I worked with kids in the projects in San Francisco for a long time, and so to think of it, I'm very moved to think that somebody like one of them could be mayor. Yeah.
San Francisco's been almost pretty good with that, though. To me, who was that mayor? They had Willie Brown.
Willie Brown.
I mean, they seem to get pretty good mayors. To me, they do. They seem okay. You know what I'm saying? As compared to like Oakland.
Well, Oakland had Jerry Brown.
Yeah. But
I mean, I don't like Jerry Brown much, but he did a good job as mayor.
Right.
Advocating for the city. Yeah, I was in San Francisco when Willie Brown was mayor. Well, then they had Gavin Newsom, who's going to possibly be our governor.
Ooh.
I like Gav.
Yeah.
I think he's fun.
He's good. I like him too. He's pretty cool. He's cool.
Yeah, well, I was having this discussion with my friend about. He's a known quality again because I was in San Francisco around when he was getting started, and he's about the same age as me, and so you're sort of conscious of people like that,
Right.
and I think he tries, and I'm somebody where sometimes to me that's not enough, and sometimes it is. He's had some successes and some failures, and I think his heart's in the right place, and I think he's smart. I think he cares about people.
Now, do you think at this day and age, do you think it's even possible for a mayor, governor, or a president to be a good leader? Do you think
Of course I do.
I mean, I don't know. I just don't see it. And I'm not saying because of them personally.
Yeah.
I just think everybody's kind of there's a lot of real picky, wishy-washy people. And I think there's for every time you do good things, I think there's a lot of people that find bad things to it. So it's kind of like, I've never just seen someone that everybody kind of even, that everybody was okay with. I haven't seen that yet.
Well, if everybody's okay with you, then that's a sign that you're not taking any risks. Okay? I mean, there were people that really vehemently disagreed with Martin Luther King in his lifestyle during his life. And he's a good example since he's so well known, but go back to my guy, Bayard Rustin. He made a lot of decisions that people didn't like.
Right.
So I would rather, and that's just one of the things I find pretty annoying and stupid when you bring up somebody like Joe Biden and somebody will say like, oh, well, he voted this on bank bills. It's like, he was in the Senate for 40 years. I don't agree with everything he did.
Right.
I like most of what he did. And see, somebody like Bernie Sanders can come along like acting all holy because he never did anything. It's like, okay, it's easy for you to talk about how things should be if you haven't tried to make them be that way.
Right,
and there's somebody like Lyndon Johnson that gets a bunch of shit from people, and he passed a fucking civil rights bill in 1957, and people said it wasn't good enough. Well, it was 1957, okay? And Bayard even said, it was a good start. But here he gets all this shit, and he got a civil rights bill through in 1957, which nobody else could. And the way he did it was by taking out he took out a bunch of provisions, but he protected the vote in such a way that basically politicians would need to get black people's votes. So he took out, like, basically a whole bunch of civil rights that were being demanded in this bill and basically just safeguarded voting rights because it wasn't going to pass otherwise. And he said, in an impolite way, which I would not quote, that, like, okay, this means that the politicians are going to need to go down there and campaign for black people, and that means they're going to need to respond to black people.
Right.
So that was okay. It was a start, and then he went ahead and passed more civil rights legislation. So yeah, I mean, he made mistakes. He made big mistakes, and he had big accomplishments.
So you pretty much like the ones that kind of
push
the envelope a little bit.
I like him rough around the edges.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't relate to aspirational or perfect. I don't. Not interesting to me, not inspiring to me.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, so that's my LBG. But wait, what were you? Oh, so we were talking about Gav and people making decisions. By San Francisco standards, Gav is pretty has been considered pretty conservative because he's pro-business. Okay, the problem with San Francisco is that they haven't had people make smart deals. It's like, okay, businesses are there; they're not going to go anywhere. You need to make smart deals with them.
Right.
So, yeah, but I mean, I'm pleased. I think there's getting to be. I can't remember some of the names, but I follow this really closely on Facebook. There's been a lot of women. There was a lot of women elected, a lot of women of color elected in these primary, or that were in their primaries and are either in office or moving on till November, and so that's really good. I mean, to me, the reason diversity is so important to me in government is because one person can only do so much. But if you get somebody in there that other people can identify with and feel close with, they have an effect far beyond themselves.
Right.
So, like, London Breed was saying that Kamala Harris was a role model for her. Okay, so and that's just it just keeps expanding.
Right.
So yeah, that's just really important to me because and intellectually you can do whatever you want intellectually, and it's not that people that haven't experienced deprivation don't care about it, but I mean, deprivation's a dramatic word, but hard times or whatever.
So now, what do you think about London Breed talking about the whole little what's the thing? Those what do you call it? There's a name she said for where you can like if you do drugs like needles and stuff, or like a safe.
Needle exchange?
No, it wasn't a needle. It was like a needle exchange, but
housing.
It was a safe. It's like if you do drugs.
Oh, safe injection sites.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or what do you? What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. Oh,
I do too. I know a lot of people don't like it. They think it's going to cause like more people to want to do drugs, of course.
Oh man, it means people are less likely to OD on a sidewalk.
Right.
And not only either die or else vulnerable to attacks and rapes and yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and it's just people can't how are people if people are like able to at least get to a little bit of a safe space and chill a little bit, they're a little closer to being able to get off drugs. I mean, with safe injection sites, you can have information for people. You can have, you can possibly have somebody there to do some medical work, and people feel more cared for. I mean, basically, we had a Solano Seniors Count meeting today, and there were some really interesting discussions about different housing plans, and Hakeem was talking about a meeting he'd gone to, and like, damn, I really want, we got to get him up here to talk about that. But even if it's not your, it's cheaper, disruption costs society. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of people that are working but can't make their rent because it's so expensive. So if you can create some subsidized or like low income housing, the people living there are still going to be having jobs and contributing to the economy and society. You know, they just, you know, there's just too much of a disparity between wages and housing. And so it's like, okay, or people can not be able to pay their rent, and so then become homeless. And
right.
I was just coming up with it, especially, it's like, okay, disruption to society is expensive.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. Seattle has a real severe homeless crisis too.
Right. Yeah, that's getting bad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, they did something. This to me is so fucking stupid. And this got attention all over the country. They passed like a millionaire's tax. They passed a tax that was basically targeted toward Amazon and some of the big companies there. And then, so they passed it, and then the companies threatened to pick up and leave, so they repealed it. It's like, how stupid is that?
Wow.
Well, it's just, if you're going to put the time and effort into making legislation, to me it's just something like, it should not be such a mystery. Okay, like, you can have votes and stuff in Congress or in city councils and all that, but a whole lot of what happens happens behind the scene. And if you can't get, like, how could they not know that was going to happen? I mean, the companies practically said it before.
Right.
But anyway, that money was supposed to help the homeless.
I just can't believe they would want to leave and not even want to help, you know?
Well, they're about money.
Yeah, that's still messed up, though. I don't know. I'm kind of like one of them people, like, I read something about, this is one of my arguments I got into one group in Facebook, was the $15 an hour for McDonald's.
Yeah.
I'm like, why not give them $15 an hour? Everybody's into this thing like, well, you shouldn't give them, their job isn't worth, you know, they shouldn't be getting paid $15. I'm like, why? I don't understand the logic of it, I guess, because they're considered, it's McDonald's, they're flipping burgers. That's like, to a lot of people in their mind, that's like when you're a kid, that's supposed to be your first job. You're not supposed to be getting paid $15 an hour. Isn't that silly? That's what I'm saying.
Well, now there's a whole lot of it. I mean, to me, it's just it's reasonable to have, you know, look at it. What are you supposed to rent with a job that pays $15 an hour?
Thank you. And that's what I've been saying for a while. I don't get it. And everybody's like,
it just comes
you talk to people about that, they're like, no.
It just comes back to whether we're going to have standards of how people live, and I think that having a safe home should be a standard. I think having a safe home and enough to eat.
I agree.
Should.
You know, like if they give them $15 an hour, who cares? I was like, even if they don't get paid that, you know that people who are there, they're still going to get help from the government if they don't get paid.
Well, we hope.
Well, I mean, technically, if you're making under $20,000 a year, you're gonna be eligible for some kind of help. You may not get the help you need.
Yeah.
But I mean, why not just pay someone $15 an hour?
Trump takes it away.
Oh yeah, that's right. Unless Trump takes it away, but it's just I don't understand the logic of that, and it's like. Yeah. I hate to say not everybody can be a lawyer, not everybody can be a doctor.
You're telling me.
So it's like some people, you know, I hate to say it, they might have to be at McDonald's for years.
Oh man, see, I got a family of doctors and lawyers. So I get people are like, well, why aren't you a doctor? I'm like, well, see, thanks. Gee, thanks.
Well, I have a friend that went to school to be a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and he went through it and he passed and everything. He said it's hard to find a job as a lawyer. That's what he told me. Now I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the whole how all that works. But he said it's not that easy.
It depends what he wants to do.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know what kind of lawyer he wants to be.
I think it's hard to find a enjoyable job as a lawyer. Yeah. That can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I keep forgetting about millennials too.
Oh,
they have a thing about them that they have to have the exact type of job or else they won't do it. They don't know how to struggle it. So like you said, there's a possibility that even if he took a job as a lawyer for a court or something, he probably doesn't want to do that because that's like the lowest form. I don't know how
it's not. That's a high form. He's probably, I mean, when you start as a lawyer, you're getting the grunt work because that's what it's like when you start out in a field. I mean, my brother is an extremely successful attorney. He worked his ass off. I mean, like 80-hour weeks for years and total grunt work. Like, no, you do not get to become a lawyer and start doing all these exciting things. So I think that is quite possible. That
yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. I just don't know, man. I wasn't too happy about people tripping off of them getting paid $15 an hour for working at McDonald's. I just thought that was the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking with Hakeem today about our generation. I mean, he's a little younger than me, but I think he's about my generation. Trying to be that we should be. I'm not looking forward to this. We should be a bridge to help younger people learn to respect their elders.
Definitely.
Yeah. So kind of sucks, but because I just had this experience recently just thinking, like, I don't want to fucking talk to millennials. There's this thing of jumping on every single thing you say, and I'm just, like, I don't want to talk to them any more than I have to. I don't like feeling jumped on.
Yeah.
So
I see it a lot, man. I see it. It's funny. I don't know. I think it's hilarious. I think it's funny.
Well, and it's, I think it's a part of me that, I think it's like certain issues that I probably feel like insecure about or something. It's like, so what?
You know what it is? Yeah, that's how we are. Us older ones, we're like kind of like we don't play that, but we don't, you know what I'm saying? We don't play that mess. And to me, it's like once you start getting to learn, like from me doing this show, I'm in different groups. So when I do our show, when you see me on the phone, I usually share our show in different avenues so everybody can see it. And you just kind of know, like, when you talk to certain people in these groups, like the millennials, and their arguments are funny. And like I said, some of them, you just know, like, okay, I was in this one group, and I'll say this was hilarious. This guy wasn't that much a millennial. He was like 30 years old.
That's millennial.
That's still considered millennial? Okay. I didn't know.
It's like 20s to early 30s is millennial.
So this guy was a Republican.
Yeah.
We were in this group. He was a Republican. So he gets on talking all this stuff about liberals. They're trying to live off the system. Yada, 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 right? So he was like, man, I worked a long time. I've been working since I was 15. I got my own house. And he was like a farmer guy. He was like a farmer type dude. He was from Wisconsin or something. And he was like, I have my own tractor, my own house, I help my parents pay for their house and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, this guy's trying to show out now, right? And so, a week later, and so I guess some of his fellow Republicans who in the group with him didn't really believe him. Mm-hmm. So they went snooping on his page, and come to find out, the tractor was his dad's tractor. He was living with his parents.
Yeah.
In his parents' house.
Classic Facebook.
And so technically, what he was down low saying is once his parents go, he's going to get everything they have. So of course, that lets me know that's what he's going to tell everybody when his parents goes, that he did all that. When he didn't. He's living with his parents. He doesn't even have his own place.
That's sad.
And it was just funny to me. And he was doing that stuff that I said, like, like you were just talking, like how you'll get millennials, they'll talk stuff because they may have Googled and looked at stuff, but some of them aren't really real with what they're doing. They're just,
well, it's driving me crazy.
They're just arguing with you.
Well, yeah, no, I just, and that's, I don't argue, and that's, I'm an expert at not arguing. I still want to get Susan back here because I was still like, oh man, I'm still like gashing my teeth a little bit about diplomacy, but no, I mean, I just have different tricks I use, but I really try to be calm and patient and not, which I usually am, but I mean, I'm thinking about cracking it up a little bit. Be like, don't fucking talk. I mean, especially about it's also a problem with doing. Ace, look.
What up, Age? Shout out to Duck Soup.
Yeah, Duck Soup.
Age Scott, man, what's going on? Age, Duck Soup, baby.
Yeah. Here he is. Oh wow. We better wait. We should be interested. We better be interesting. We better be interesting. Okay, so I was talking with him about doing a graphic novel about Bayard Rustin. Like the March trilogy about John Lewis, but doing one with Bayard Rustin.
What did he say?
He said to talk about it when he's done with his project.
Nice.
That would be really cool. I mean, that would be a way to use some of my research, because I want to do it about the 1947 journey of reconciliation, when Bayard Rustin led an interracial group on a cross-country bus tour to challenge segregated seating after the 1946 legal case Morgan versus Virginia. So we could do it about that, and also about a march that Bayard put together in 1959, which we've talked about, to protest colonial powers doing nuclear tests in the desert. But when he was doing that, Bayard was working in Africa, but people wanted him back. But everybody wanted him back wherever he was. I mean, because he was just so brilliant, and he needed to show that he was loyal to they needed him for the civil rights movement, basically. So he went back. Okay, here's an interesting sort of history quandary that I had. My friend Peter is the son of Senator Henry Jackson, and so he kind of promotes so he makes different posts that are really historical. And so on one of his posts, I spoke up a little bit on this, because it was turning into a little bit too much of a good old days. So I posted a lot of these people weren't agreed with at the time, and one of the people was an aide to Hubert Humphrey, the Senator Hubert Humphrey, and so I do a little bit of derailing. So I wrote on his post. I researched Bayard Rustin. He was close with Humphrey. Did you ever meet him?
Right.
And so this guy said yes. He said yes. He met Bayard, and he said the talk around the office was King was the show horse, Bayard was the workhorse. A great man that was let down by people that should have respected him. So I was a little bit like, wow. I was like, wow. I wish that he had chosen different words, because I felt weird like posting something like that. But the whole thing with what I do is research, is getting new information. And so here's a chance right there to hear from somebody who was there, you know, because my friend knows people that were Hubert Humphrey's aides.
Exactly.
So that was interesting. So I posted it to the Bayard Rustin group, but posts have to be improved there. So I wasn't sure if they'd approve it, but they did. So I wrote that underneath it, saying, you know, I feel weird about posting this, but history isn't what you like.
Right, exactly. They can't get mad for history. I mean, if it happened, it happened.
Exactly. And it's an example to me, I like to see the human side. And so hearing something like that, to me, that shows the humanity of Martin Luther King. Like, wow, back then, he was just a person that people could say things like that about.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Music. Want to do some music?
Music.
Break time. Let's
Okay.
do it.